The inventory module is probably one of the most detailed modules within CallTime, and it is a database of the equipment that you own or potentially rent, and it can keep track of every single detail about the equipment. You will have to decide what detail is best for your organization. If you're a large organization and want to keep very detailed records of your equipment, this is the place to do it. And it will take somewhat of an investment in time to enter all that data and set it up. There's some hints I can give you about speeding that up. But if you're a smaller organization, let's say you have 2 or 3 cameras, it's going to be relatively simple. You can kind of keep it lightweight. And let me go into some of the detail that is involved in equipment. The first thing you need to understand is that equipment is organized by packages, kits, and equipment. So there's a hierarchy. So let me show you a diagram. Here we have an example of a camera package. And the package is at the top of the pyramid. And below it are what I would call dependencies. So here's a tripod kit. Here's a camera kit. Here's a monitor kit. Here's a lens kit. So kits represent a collection of items. Packages represent a collection of kits and items, or in other words, equipment. So the tripod kit is a dependency of the camera package, and the fluid head, the tripod sticks, the tripod handle, and the tripod bag are all dependencies of the tripod kit. It's really important to remember that the package and kits are really just placeholders. They will hold the rate that you're charging for that camera package, or you could actually put a kit in your estimate or work order. You don't have to make it a package, but this is going to include the day rate that you can include in estimates and work orders. And the whole reason for this is to expedite the selection and scheduling of a bunch of gear at once. So a typical organization might have 1,000 records in their equipment database, and they want a filtering mechanism to help cull that information down and just get to the 5 cameras they want and select it. So when you book, a camera package, let's say it's the FS9 blue camera, it's also going to book the rest of these dependencies. And those dependencies are going to book the rest of the stuff down the line so that you can get some accurate conflict resolution and conflict flagging and checking. So you don't book one item on 2 different shoots. So now that you understand the relationship between the packages, kits, and equipment, let's dive into a little more detail on a piece of equipment. So let me show you kind of how that structure works. Right here, I've got a kit, camera support, orange. It's a Sockler tripod kit. It shows this little chevron here, which means that there's items that are dependent on that kit. And I can open it up and I can see that these items are bundled or dependent on that kit. So if I go into a job order and I select equipment, I go kit, camera support, and I select the orange Sockler kit, it's going to book all that and the dependencies here. So if the VCT14 has an issue, it's going to flag you on that. I will mention that that level of detail flagging can be set in the account management. If you don't want that constantly flagging, you can turn that detail off so that it won't track conflicts at this lower level. It'll just track it at the kit level or the package level. So let's take a look at a piece of equipment. Here is equipment, camera support, Sockler, carbon fiber tripod legs. When we go into the detail here, this is where the category and the subcategory and the color and all the different information. Notice how I have the manufacturer, the model number, and a description. And when they show up in the work order, this will all be one sentence. Sockler CF-100M, carbon fiber tripod legs. Here is the place where you could put the serial number for that, an asset tag or barcode. Here are the prices that are going to show up in the work order. Now there's no prices populated here because this is a piece of equipment, camera support. It's just an item. It's a carbon fiber tripod legs, and you wouldn't just put legs in a work order. You'd put the whole kit is what would happen. So that's why there's no cost here. But what you probably would do is you would enter, the serial number of that. And here it's already got a barcode. when you go into here, here's the detail about external and internal costs. So if you've bought this set of sticks, you as a company owner or manager might want to kind of keep track of the costs. So it's not uncommon for a pair of good sticks to cost $2,000 or $3,000. So let's say you just bought a set of new sticks 2 months ago, and you want to kind of keep a record of internal costs. And what this number is really up to you from a management standpoint. But let's just say it's $25 a day. That's kind of an internal cost. This will feed into the profitability report on the work orders if you have that module enabled on your plan. So if it's a company-owned asset, you might want to set this rate. If it's a sub-rental, you'd want to find out from the vendor what they're going to cost. So it might be, more, it might be that. And this information, again, will filter through to the work order, and you'll see that a little later. When you buy this piece of equipment, you probably want to enter some purchase information. So maybe keep track of what it costs on the open market, what you actually paid for it, the date you purchased it, the replacement value, the insurance value, and the carnet value. So if you plan to rent things, this area should not be ignored. The replacement value is going to show up on the rental manifest so that when a customer checks that out, they know you're going to charge them if they lose it or damage it. The insurance value is going to come out on another report that you might give to your insurance company. Sometimes when you have an inland marine policy, that insurance company wants a list of your equipment for their records. So that's where you would put this value, what you wanted to insure it for. If you're an organization that travels internationally a lot, you probably are going to need a carnet. And so it's a good idea to put the carnet value. A best practice is kind of to make your carnet the same as your insurance value. This is a double-edged sword because the higher this number is, the higher the price of your carnet. But if it gets lost, the insurance company is going to want to see your carnet. So you really need to keep valid numbers in here for a lot of reasons. For legal reasons, for carnet reasons, for insurance reasons. These numbers all need to be very valid. So don't over or undervalue these numbers here. For those of you who don't know what a carnet is, it's basically an international passport for your equipment. When you travel to Canada from the United States and you have all your gear, the customs officials are going to say, okay, where's your carnet? And if you say you don't have one, they're going to say, well, how do we know you're not going to sell this equipment in Canada and not give us the sales tax and a variety of other reasons? Carnet is an international passport. It's actually a bond that more or less guarantees that any equipment that you bring into the country, you're going to use there, and then you're going to export it from the country. So I won't get into all the levels of how to use a carnet. You have to produce a specialized list of your gear that is part of the carnet document. So it wants to know where that piece of equipment was made. So it might be made in Japan. They want to know how much it weighs. Not really sure why, but let's say it weighs 2.5 pounds. That will automatically convert it into metric, and you want to designate it for carnet number 1. You can have 3 different carnets as designation, but again, don't forget these values here. So let's say this is $1,700. Some other items that are good to know is if it's a taxable item. Where I am in Florida, services are not taxable. So when you go out with a kit, there's generally no tax on that with a camera kit, tripod kit, whatever, and you're using it, it's your tool. But let's say you finish the shoot and the client says, hey, can you sell me a hard drive? You're actually physically selling somebody something. And in that context, you need to charge tax on it. So this is where you would designate that item is taxable. There's also a field for tax report. Again, in Florida, we have something called tangibles tax. The equipment sitting on your shelf is taxed each year by the local county, and you'll want to have a tax report for the items that fall into that category of stuff. There's allow multiples, no conflicts. So let's say you're inputting sandbags, which generally don't get a barcode. They're just a bag of sand, and you might have 30 or 40 of them out there, and you don't want to detail. So when you're putting together a job, particularly like a rental, you can just put the amount of sandbags, and if that's clicked, it won't create a conflict. Also, there's an insurance report here. So a lot of times the carrier wants to know the items that you want them to insure, and that's an easy way to generate a report. you can put a QuickBooks code in here. So those of you that have the QuickBooks export functionality, you can put a code in there and it will track through when you export your job order. You can take a photo of the item and keep a record of it. That's depends on you and how much you want to keep track of the details. So going back to my chart that shows you the hierarchy, I want to talk a little bit about when you put something into maintenance. So this handle has been designated as usable with limitations. So it's a maintenance issue. And let me show you how that will show up in a job order. So let's look at another way of handling damages and maintenance. So let me go to the blue tripod, and I'm going to say, you know, it's got a maintenance issue. And I don't know when it's going to come back, but I'm going to say level bubble is broken. So I'm going to save that. So it presents a wrench, which means it's in maintenance. So let me go back to the job. So now I'm in the job. I'm going to add that blue tripod. So I'm going to go kit, camera support. I'm going to add the blue one. It flags me right there. Maintenance, but working with limitations. So I'm going to go ahead and add that, and it's going to continue to prompt me. Now I'm going to delete that just for illustration purposes. I'm going to go to the inventory, and I'm going to come back to here, and I'm going to say, you know, on further review, that tripod is out of service. So boom. I'm going to try to schedule that piece of gear. That blue kit is out of service and we don't know when it's coming back. So it shows you that you own it, but it will not let you schedule it. We've talked a lot about packages and kits and the equipment that are dependencies and the kind of the pyramid structure. So how do you add equipment to a kit to make it a dependent? So how do you add those items that are attached to the kit, in other words? So there's two ways of doing it. You can go to the kit and then reach down and assign the equipment. But I personally think it's easier to go to the equipment and attach it to a kit. So I've already made a kit called Camera Support Blue. And now I'm looking at this individual equipment that I know is going to go into that kit. So probably the easiest way, I'm going to go into this BCT14, and I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom, and I'm going to say, let's add a kit to that, kind of the reverse order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go kit, camera support, and then I'm going to go blue. And that gives me the only tripod kit in that category. So I'm just going to say add selected. And I'm going to go down and save that. And then I'm going to go do the same thing here. Save my filtering. So you get the picture. Now at the top here, I have tabs for different things. Remember how I talked about the packages? So that's going to give me all the packages, the kits, the equipment. These 5 tabs are editable. So it doesn't have to be rooms. I can make that whatever I want. Medias like hard drives, miscellaneous. These are just ones that I found are useful. And that is edited up here in manage categories. So you see the package, the kit, and the equipment are created by the system and you cannot change that. But you can create other categories. You have 5 other categories to work with here. You can change to be whatever you want. So the way this works is you set up these first, and then you can have as many subcategories as you want, really. So in this case, I added an audio suite, and the category is room, and the name is audio suite. So later, when I'm in a work order, I would filter by category, and I would say room, and then I would say audio suite, and then it would show me all the audio suites that were available. The manage colors and numbers area here is where you manage your colors. So when you open this, these colors will be populated, but I'm just providing you some seed data to start working with. You don't have to stay with these colors. I'll be quite honest with you. These colors were generated by the kinds of electrical tape that I could get at the store. So I strongly believe in color coding equipment. It makes it a lot easier to identify it. So these are the color of electrical tape. That seems to work best, but you choose what you want. If you don't like that gray, you can go in here, choose a color picker and choose whatever gray or whatever color you want, name it, and it will be there for you. I've also uh, allowed it to create numbers. So you might have van number 2. You get the idea. Some people like numbers. I think color is a very effective way to do it, but it depends on the resource that you're managing. When back into the inventory, when I go to all items, I can also do a search. So if I want to do package, camera, and then let's say Sony, it's going to filter all my camera packages that are Sony, and it's going to show me there. Now here's an important distinction. Why do we have a generic? The reality is when you're in the bidding stage of a project and you are bidding out 3 FX9s for that day, you don't want to start assigning specific company resources. You don't know if that bid is going to get accepted. So the generic is a placeholder. So you don't want to schedule generics. When it comes to the bid being accepted, then you're going to change it to the red or the green or the orange or whatever. So that is why the generic is there. So that is just a tool for you to use in bidding. Some useful things that I found is that, let's say I go to this Blackmagic Decklink card. I've got the details in here, right? I've got, it's a company-owned asset, and I'm delegating $50 to that. There's also this button here called Duplicate Item. So if I was inputting, like let's say a tripod, and I input the feet that go on the bottom of the Sachtler tripod, there's 3 of them, and I don't want to enter that data 3 times. I can enter the first one, hit duplicate, and it will duplicate everything but the serial number and the asset tag and the color. So then you can go into that record, just enter the color it is, and the serial number and the asset tag, and it'll save you a little time. So that's something that's helpful when you're building items. now let's discuss how we can add a maintenance note to a piece of equipment that might not be operating up to spec. So I'm going to go back to my blue tripod here, and I've got a foot, a rubber foot, and I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to go down to the status, and it's available, but I know that that has an issue that is going to limit its performance, and I'm going to say it has a hole in the foot. And I'm going to say that has a and I'm going to say has a missing rubber pad on the bottom. Save that. And now we see that there is a wrench there, indicating that that is an item in this kit that has a maintenance issue. So what does that look like from the work order standpoint? So let's go to work order. I'll go here, and I'm going to So what does that look like from a work order perspective? I'm going to go to work orders, and I'm going to go here. So here's a work order, and I'm going to add that. So I'm going to go, it's a kit, camera support, and it reveals the blue tripod. You can enter that in there. And when I schedule it, it says there's a component in maintenance. So it's missing a rubber pad on the bottom of the foot. So that is, it says usable with limitations. You know, that tripod still works. The camera operator is not going to care for that issue, but it will still work. It doesn't have to bring everything to a halt. So that's the intention of that. So just for example, I'm going to delete that again, and I'm going to go back to inventory. And I'm going to go so now I'm going to come to the kit, and I'm going to go here, and I am going to mark the whole kit as out of service. And I'm going to mark that as out of service, and we see that the circle with the cross, and we see that the red circle is there. So let me show you what that looks like in work orders. I'm going to come back to my work order, and I'm going to add that. It is a kit. It is camera support. And I go here, and that blue kit is just totally out of service. We know that the company owns it. It's in our inventory, but it is not going to let me schedule it because it's out of service. And when I try, it gives me that that warning.